Hey guys, welcome back to Ordinary Time. I'm so excited for this podcast. Today, our guest is Clare Hilo, who is a senior event specialist for Focus, and she's come here all the way from Colorado. Technically she's from here, but you're here all the way from Colorado at this point. Mm-hmm. This is amazing.
Yeah.
What's even cooler is when I reached out to you to come on today's podcast and to just be on the podcast in general. You already happened to be in town when I contacted you. So I was like, wait, don't go anywhere. You have to come.
Meant to be.
It was totally meant to be.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
And of course, I reached out to you just a couple days after this amazing Seek conference that they had in January.
Mm-hmm.
And
Salt Lake City.
I was thinking, there's no way she's going to be, around, available. And I'm like, hey, let's talk in a couple weeks. And it didn't work out that we could talk. And it was just like totally meant to be. So thank you for joining me.
You're so welcome. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, so I gave a brief introduction, but why don't you give us a better introduction? Tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, what led you to, really going to Colorado to work for Focus. And there's a lot of different, stories of Focus. There's the missionary route and, so let's just back up. Talk a little bit about who you are, your journey, and start wherever you think is appropriate.
Okay. All right. So I'm the fourth oldest of 10 kids. And my parents, 10 or 9 siblings. So my parents had massive conversions in Medjugorje when I think it was in 1989, and they came back from that trip and just everything changed for them. And so we were raised in a very, strict Catholic household. I remember my mom taking us to Mass every single morning before school. And we hated every minute of it. And you look back now and it's like, oh, thank you for doing that. That was so cool that we got to do that every single day before school started. We had a rosary group at our house every Sunday night. And my parents are just very faithful Catholics. And by the grace of God, all 9 of my siblings are all practicing Catholics to this day. The oldest is 38. The youngest is, actually, Maggie's 39. And the youngest, Matthew, is 22. So we're all practicing Catholics, and I think that's something to be thankful for, and it shouldn't be taken for granted, for sure. So in high school, I was super involved. I would go with my mom. I remember we would pray before school in front of the abortion clinic just here on University, and I did everything that I could to stay involved in my faith. I would go to the retreats out at Marywood. I would do stuff like that, but nothing really. I was kind of like a space cadet in high school, very just like in my own little world. But I did all of these things, and now I look back and it's like God was slowly planting these seeds in my life. So fast forward, I went to college at Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi. And I just, got sucked into that party culture, and pretty quickly, by the 3rd year, I was just steeped in sin, which is really the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And my sister was a Focus missionary at the time in Kansas. My sister Betsy met her spouse there and everything, but she called me, and because she knew like how low I was and just sort of what was going on in my life, and she said, I want you to come to this conference we're having in Nashville. We're having a Focus Greek conference. And I was like, no, I'm not going to some Catholic conference, thanks, but no thanks kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you're coming. Like all my siblings at this point were like, you need to like shape up. And so my cousin agreed to drive to Nashville with me from Oxford. So we went, and that weekend changed my life. And I think that the main thing was, of course, we had all the sacraments there, and I was sort of falling away at this point. I was not going to Mass at all. And it was this beautiful moment where there was a speaker there. Her name was Sarah Swafford. And we're really good friends with her now at this point, but she gave this talk on emotional chastity and friendship and virtue, and all of the college kids sitting in the room were really cool people who I was like, we got to know each other as the weekend went on, and I'm like, I'd rather be hanging out with all these people than anyone I know. and they're faithful Catholics, and we can go out and have a beer together. You know, it was just this, it was like we all had this thing in common, which you know now that you've come into the church, it's our Catholic faith. And so that's what Focus has done for me, and I know thousands of other people, that it makes your faith come alive in a way that it's unfortunate that it hasn't already by that point in your life. Because by the time you hit college, you should already be moving and grooving and, you know, like just loving your faith. But the problem is a lot of kids aren't. And, you know, I'm not a theologian or anything, but I know that it starts with your relationship with Jesus Christ. And that weekend for me in Nashville was the first time I met Jesus Christ in the flesh. And so, and I wish I could say everything was perfect after that. I kind of was on a moral roller coaster for another few years. I came home, ended up graduating from UNF, and then I went straight into teaching. And then I just got my master's from Catholic University in Washington, D.C. And then quickly after that started working for Focus again. I'm sort of a rebound with Focus. But I applied to be a missionary, and I actually didn't get the job the first time around. And thank God I didn't, because I was just not in a good place. And so I really think that the Lord has a plan. It's his plan, and I'm grateful that I didn't get the job as a missionary. But now, just coming back from the Seek conference, it's just, I'm able to be around all these amazing college kids, and just, yeah, watching them now have that conversion that, by the grace of God, I had back in college too.
Well, so what a full circle moment then to be, you know, a lot of people get involved in an organization, or they think about their identity as it relates to relationships, careers, and it's usually rooted in, you know, some experience they had, right? And so for you, you know, you already had first-hand experience, the front row view of what this organization's capable of, the transformative experience. And so now to come back and how God's led you to Focus once again in the capacity you're in. So as a senior event specialist, you know, your primary role for the organization is an event like Seek, to ensure that this conference and the experience is what it is for these students. So what better missionary field, or what better mission field than something like that? So talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, let's jump into this conference, because this past conference, Seek, is, at least for me, I'm new to the Catholic Church-ish now. You don't hear a lot about popular Catholicism. So, like, to your point, like, I don't think of the Catholic culture, especially in college, as like cool kids, which is not true.
I know.
I mean, and I think what happened in this particular cycle is the world got to see, first and foremost, that the youth and the young adults are, I mean, just Catholic culture in the young adults and college ministry is thriving. First of all, you come after, this all comes right after the National Eucharistic Revival. Mm-hmm. So you have this amazing event in Indianapolis where hundreds of thousands of people are gathered, maybe not necessarily inside of the arena, but have made their own pilgrimage to Indianapolis. And then you see, wow, look at the Catholic Church. And then you have this conference, Seek, and you see 25, 30,000 college kids gathering to worship Jesus publicly, no shame. I mean, I think the whole world is taking notice right now and thinking, wait a second, what is the Catholic Church, what's going on over there?
I hope so. I hope that that's what they're thinking. And the National Eucharistic Congress was incredible. I was working the whole time pretty much, but it was on a bigger scale than Seek. Seek is becoming, we're trying to make it for everybody, right? It is a lot of college students, but now families can come. We're trying to make it like the biggest Catholic conference each year. Just a place where people can come and just fall in love with the Lord all over again. And it's kind of a good way to start the year too, because our conferences always fall on the 1st of January, the first 5 days of January. Sometimes it'll start on December 31st, and then we're all spending New Year's Eve together, and then it's the next 5 days. So it's an incredible way to start the year. But yeah, Seek is our and I should probably preface that FOCUS stands for the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. And SEEK, we have a model of win, build, send. So we send missionaries out onto college campuses. I think we've got about 250 in the United States. We're also international now. We're in Ireland, Germany, and one other place. But the SEEK conference is essentially the win. So when you go to a SEEK conference, it's impossible to not be changed. And so it's really incredible. Like my friend Jake, who is the head of conference, he's in charge of like the whole thing. His dad came this year and he's not even Catholic. And I was like, oh, Jake, he's done for. Like, and he was like, really?
He's on the train, he's coming.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, like you can't come and not have a life-changing experience. And so SEEK is supposed to be the win. And then you go and you build, which is either starting a Bible study on your campus or somebody investing in you on campus. And then you're sent out to start your own Bible study and so it's spiritual multiplication and it works. It's we call it now the little way of evangelization. But really it's just friendship. It's and it's the things that nobody wants to do. It's staying faithful to a Bible study, being vulnerable, being accountable. And so when you spend, you're really going back to campus and you're walking with students. And so all the missionaries say, God is my boss, because he really is. You wake up every day and your job is to pray a holy hour. All FOCUS missionaries have to pray 1 holy hour a day.
Wow.
And they have to go to Mass every day. That's a non-negotiable. If you're going to be a FOCUS missionary, you have to go to Mass, you have to pray a holy hour every day. And even us at the office in Denver, that's where the headquarters is, we stop every single day at 3 p.m. to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet together. We have bells in our office. Everybody stops what they're doing because our founder and our president, they want us to know and remember that nothing gets done without prayer. And the soul of the apostolate is where it's at, and you can't give what you don't have. And so even at the headquarters, they're like, your prayer time is the most important thing to us. And how many bosses tell you that?
No, they want activity.
Exactly, and they'll give you at FOCUS, they give you 2 Mass times at our office. So we have a priest come and say Mass at 8 a.m. and we have another priest come and say Mass at noon. And you get to pick which one you go to. We have priests available for confessions. We get at least 30 minutes of prayer time on our own. And then we do the Divine Mercy Chaplet. And it's a real blessing, but just a reminder that you can't give what you don't have. So the SEEK conference is supposed to be the win. But I met 3 missionaries this year that are missionaries, but they never even went to a SEEK conference.
Wow.
So you don't have to go to a SEEK conference to have this big life-changing experience. I mean, they're amazing, and I think everybody should at least go to one at some point in their life. But God will do what he wants to. And just because, these missionaries didn't go to SEEK, and they are now missionaries on campus. So it's pretty amazing.
Well, and not only that, but the model you just described, isn't that like just steeped in the biblical, just in biblical history? I mean, think about the SEEK of the Bible. I mean, you think about Jesus feeding the 5,000, right? Great crowds gathered. He had pity on them. And so he says, let's feed them, right? And he takes these 5 loaves and 2 fish and he, gives a prayer of thanksgiving and then multiplies this and feeds the great crowds. And that's the win, right? But then it was the build and go. And that's part of what I recall from the Gospels is these big gatherings and Jesus doing transformative things. And then it was, all right, let's multiply this, let's build this, and sending people out. And that's where we are today.
And that's exactly what it is. And that's why we have that model within FOCUS, because it's they call it the model, like from the maker or something like that. Like Jesus invested in 12 people deeply, just 12.
Yeah.
And they went out and they changed the world. So you start your own Bible study on campus, you might not feel like you're doing much. You might feel like, God, is this even doing anything? I mean, I know when I was a teacher, I felt the same way. Is this even making a difference? I mean, this is exhausting. But the fact is, you as a teacher, you could be changing a kid's life. As a missionary, you could be changing a person's whole world. And you might not feel like it in the moment, but that's what Jesus did. He basically went on a 3-year camping trip with 12 of his best buddies. And then they went out and were able to change the world. And that's in a time with no media, nothing compared to what we have.
And
now.
by the way, 2,000 years later, it still works. It's still thriving.
It still works because you're entering, and because it's friendship.
Yeah.
At its core, it's friendship. And who doesn't want to be seen, known, and loved?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And our missionaries, they go out on campus. And I was just talking about this with a friend, that you're in high school, right? And you might have been the prom queen, or you're the most popular girl in school, or you're, the star of the football team. And then you go into college, no one really cares who you are. Nobody really cares. And that's so sad to say. But, and then you're just kind of like lost. You're like, well, I was the biggest deal at my high school, but guess what? Every other sorority girl was the biggest deal at her high school. So you start to have this reality sets in a little bit.
Well, and the sense of worthiness kind of goes out the window because of that identity crisis, right? It's
right.
So we become so just weak in worthiness of we aren't worthy, and so we seek worthiness from all types of just shameful, regretful ways, right? Because that yearning of wanting to be seen and loved.
And that's what the college campuses, that's what Focus is trying to change on college campuses, is saying, no, you belong here in front of the Eucharist. You belong here where people actually care about your soul getting to heaven. They're just they're not just in it to have a good time with you and to go drinking with you every night. They want you to get to heaven. And these missionaries, oh man, they care so much. It's Curtis Martin, our founder, says we're in the business of unrequited love. And it's like, I don't like that word, like I've experienced that. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but unrequited love does not feel good.
Yeah.
But as missionaries, that's what we do every day, is you have to be willing to say, yeah, this kid might reject me 10 times in a row and not come to my Bible study. Well, am I going to take that personally, or am I going to pray about it and say, Lord, do you want me to ask this kid again? So there's a bunch of different ways that we reach out to college students, but we, at the Seek Conference, Arthur Brooks, I don't know if you've heard of him, he talks about happiness. He actually has a class at Harvard University on happiness.
Okay.
And he has 450 kids on the wait list for this semester.
Wow.
I think only 100 or 150 can get into the class. And so at the Seek Conference, he's telling us about these college kids and what they want, because he knows them well.
Sure.
Right? He has these office hours with them, and they confide in him. And it's a science class. He's talking about, the psychology of happiness, really, and the science of it. And they come to him, and they don't want to talk about their papers that they're writing. They don't want to ask him the questions that he thinks they're going to ask him. They're like, at the beginning of the school year, you told us how your Catholic faith is the most important thing in your life, and can we learn more about that? So these kids are hungry for truth, and whether you know it or not, you're made for life with God, and you're made for, everyone says the whole shaped donut hole, and it's true. You're made for God, and whether you think it or you know it or you feel it, you are. It's just the reality. And what does St. Augustine say? Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. It's really, really true. And unfortunately, the college campus is where a lot of this comes out in the behaviors and.
Well, first of all, college kids are so impressionable, and we're all, and with the same notion of we're all so hungry, that anybody who brings a plate, whatever's on that plate, they're gonna eat it. And I see this time and time again, not just in the youth, by the way, but even in the adult world, of those that are still, not satisfied. And so, it's funny, I meet a lot of amazing Christians that, from my world, being Protestant before becoming Catholic, I still have great relationships with non-Catholics. And I had a conversation recently with one of these individuals who was telling me just, Brandon, it's just right now things just don't feel, there's just something feels empty. Like I'm praying with my wife and kids, like we're reading, we do a Bible study, we go to church on Sundays, and he was saying all these things, and he said something about, but it feels like there's something missing. So I looked at him, right? I said, it's because there is. He was like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, you talk about this plate of food and you eat it, but yet you're still hungry. I'm like, You know, if you eat a bag of Oreos, you could get through half the bag and you're still not full, but then all of a sudden you just feel terrible, and it might last for a couple minutes until you're hungry again. Or if you just took a few bites of a piece of steak, you're gonna be full. I said, when I think of the spiritual life, there's essentially this spiritual malnutrition of not having this dense nutrition of what it means to be a child of God and what we receive from Christ through the sacraments, especially the Eucharist. Mm-hmm. And I said, the thing you're missing is the Eucharist. What you are describing is this desire for more. Mm-hmm. And the problem with a lot of this hunger is that we're hungry every day. Some of us are hungry every hour. So where do we go?
Mm-hmm. And even when you do have the Eucharist, you're still hungry and you're not going to be completely satisfied until heaven.
That's right.
And so there's that too.
Yeah.
Like, just because you become Catholic doesn't mean, like, you are brought into the fullness of faith and the fullness of the truth.
But our hearts do long for eternity, and that's the really the missing link there too. But you know, what's also interesting is you mentioned this idea of being missionaries and what it takes to be an effective missionary, and it's rooted in prayer. You see, and the purpose of this podcast too is to hopefully reiterate and remind our listeners and our viewers that we're all being empowered by Christ and sent on some mission. And wherever our ecclesial community is, like wherever we've been, you know, planted, you know, we talk about bloom where you're planted. Well, wherever we are, God's asking us to take that as a mission field. And I think one of the most valuable lessons that we can learn is prayer. So what are, you talked a little bit about the professional environment and the resources that you've been given to incorporate prayer. What are some other aspects, though, of being a focused missionary and some of the things that you guys have found successful that the everyday person can incorporate into their lives? Because not everybody can probably do one holy hour a day and go to Mass.
Right. Well, I think divine intimacy is key, and everybody has to kind of figure that out. Like, I have a sister with 8 kids. She can't do what I can do, 34 and single, you know? So it's just, everybody has to find, like, where are you getting that divine intimacy from? I think another thing, especially for adults, because sometimes you don't really realize the healing that you need until you get older.
Wow.
So there's like this journey of healing too, right? That it's like, I feel like I've been on this journey of healing for like the last 5 years, or like actually way longer than that. But it's like, all right, God, when are you going to heal me? But what I wanted to say, Brandon, was that I think that making sure that you're free, making sure that your soul is free and protecting that is a huge thing. So like, if you're not free, and I'm not talking about like you have responsibilities as a parent, but like for me, and I'll just share this, I started going to AA recently because I realized that I have a problem with alcohol. And I look back on the times that I was hanging out with college kids and trying to minister to college kids, and I'm like, geez, I really wish, Lord, you would have taken this out of my life sooner. But God uses everything.
That's right.
And he will use you wherever you are also.
True.
So I think that, but once you're free of the things that are holding you back in life, and usually you know what they are, you're just not willing to do them yet. And usually you know what they are, and you're just like, nope, not giving you that one today, Lord. And that's what I was doing. And so I know that freedom has a lot to do with it, because you're able to take the person in front of you and love them. And so I think that freedom, I think that healing has a lot to do with it. If we need to get healing from something, or if we have addictions, getting those under control is huge. And the Blessed Mother will take care of it for you, but you have to give it to her, is what I've learned. If you don't give her that addiction or that thing that you're struggling with, she can't help. Because God loves us so much that he respects our freedom. He respects our free will so much that he won't even let you do anything that you're not ready for or that you don't want to do.
Well, and in that free will and in that freedom to be disobedient, it's where we can really appreciate his love for us, that even in that, he still loved us. And I love the verse that we find in 1 John that, we love because God first loved us. right? And when we can really wrap our heads, not just in our minds, right? Like when we can really wrap the entire person of who we are around this idea that we are children of God. And regardless of even what you just generously shared about your own, thing you're healing with, that God would even use you and loves you that much. I mean, it starts there. It has to start there because, and I can only imagine, like even just the youth, right? Where we are, I mean, it's different maybe when you and I were growing up compared to the generation now in this world of just being, the wounds of rejection, the wounds of abandonment, the wounds of just wanting to just be known. And there's so many more influences and so many more just menu items to choose from to fill those voids and to fill that gap. I mean, think about just the access to technology we have, where technology we use on a daily basis is designed to feed those hungers once we show and express the hunger once. So for those who are struggling with pornography, if they, God forbid, looked at one thing one time, that algorithm's going to continue to feed them, right? Local search engine optimization that's going to show you different places that they know based on your past experiences and interests. Right. Is that not what Satan does?
Yeah. And I think that one prayer I've been saying every single day, my mom told me about it. It's called the Auxilium Christianorum. Have you prayed it?
No, that sounds like a mouthful.
It's amazing, and you can listen to it on YouTube. It changes it automatically for that day. But what it does, and since we're talking about the evil one, parents can't be everywhere. You can't protect your kids from everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's like to have kids, but that's so scary that you can't protect them from everything. So you pray. So the Auxilium Christianorum, though, it blinds the demons. So, and you say all the regular prayers, like the St. Michael the Archangel is a part of it. You do the Litany of Humility on Fridays. So Sundays are a little bit longer, but it takes 5 minutes, and it covers everything. I mean, and you are just fully protected by the precious blood of Jesus and St. Michael the Archangel, the Blessed Mother, and everything is included. And it says, and you're asking the Blessed Mother to blind the demons so that they don't see your good works. So you're asking Mary to blind the demons so that they don't even know who they're trying to take vengeance upon. Yeah. And it works. I'm telling you.
Gosh.
I could tell the other day when I was getting attacked, and I was like, oh, I haven't said my Auxilium Christianorum prayers, and that was for sure why.
Yeah.
So you have to definitely put on your armor, and I think that sometimes looks different for everybody. You know.
Well, it's a line from the St. Michael the Archangel prayer, from the wickedness and snares of the devil, and that's what it is, right? It's just like, again, without this faith, what do we have? What do they have? And this is why this is so important. Like you said, it is beyond just college students, right? It's to parents, to the, again, to the people who are single, whatever it is. Like, we all need these practical examples here. Like, we think about armor up, put on the full armor of God. And I love that scripture passage because, one, there's order to it. Like, most people, when they get out of bed and they're getting ready for the day, there's an order to how they get dressed. Well, St. Paul provides us with a very structured thing, starting with, this, and then going to this. And every one of those items of the wardrobe have such a deep, significant meaning, right? The helmet of salvation, right? So protecting our minds, protecting our intellect, the breastplate of righteousness, right? Keeping something out of our hearts. And, feet fitted with readiness. That is such a beautiful, right? It talks about peace. So we have our feet are being dressed with the shoes, but it says to be, fitted with readiness, peace. Like, we're ready to go, but we're being firmly planted and waiting, right?
And to know that you have your guardian angel. So that's a cool thing that we believe too, is that we have 3 guardian angels with us right now. And there's a beautiful image that the truth of the guardian angels is that they're with God always, but they're also with us. Yeah. So they can turn around and behold the face of God and then turn back and be with you. So communicate with your angel and ask them for help and tell them what you need. And I've heard exorcists say that start talking to your guardian angel and just watch what happens. Like,
Wow.
they want to help us, and they're there to help us and protect us. So that's another thing that I think is important to remember.
You heard a little bit about my story. You came over, and we were sitting with my wife and my kids. We're all hanging around you like a playground. I only have 5 kids, so we're catching up to your parents.
It was amazing. Yes.
Yeah, it was so much fun. But I'll never forget what you said to me that night after I shared something, some of my story and just some of the things that God was doing in my life. And you looked at me and you said, "Brandon, you need to start praying the litany of humility every day." And at first, my wife's like nudging me. See, you need to get some humility, right? but you didn't say it like that. No, but you said it like you were so serious, as like a mother would say to their son, "Tie your shoes," right? And I bring this up because I've been praying that prayer pretty much daily. Even if I'm not praying it verbatim, I'm praying the 1, 2, 3 lines that come out of that litany of humility that normally really stick out to me. And I'm reciting those. And I'll tell you, one, thank you for saying that to me, because it was so amazing, and it's been transformative in its own way in my own life. Do I have some room? Yeah, I need some room to grow, obviously still.
It's so good, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And it's uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh, I tell people all the time that I meet, when I can tell they're going through some similar things. I'm like, dude, have you ever heard of the Litany of Humility? And most Catholics have never heard of that, right? And so every time I bring it up, I'm like, read it one time and tell me your gut doesn't just like, you don't feel the gut punch.
Yeah, you want to bomb. It's like not.
Yeah.
It's like not fun.
You're like, wow, I do want all of these things, and I don't necessarily know if I want to pray them away.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like the Saint Francis of Assisi prayer. Have you heard that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one.
So you're asking for things. You want better things for others than you want for yourself. And is that not the hardest prayer to pray?
Dude, that's so hard.
But something happens when you pray that, when you're saying, like, I had a priest tell me once that someone I was struggling with in my life, they said, start praying for that person, but not only praying for them, pray that they're happier than you.
Wow.
And I was like, why would I do that? Like, I hate this person. Why am I going to pray that they're happier than me? But when you start doing it, it's like, it's such a powerful thing when you can just say, yeah, pray that that person gets that and not me. Pray that that person, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean the false humility, right? It's like, we have to be careful of that too, because false humility is, oh, I don't have anything to offer. I'm not good. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, God made us all different, and we all have special gifts.
That's right.
And
that goes back to
humility.
That goes back to what I think it's important of the heart of being a missionary, is to have the ability to say, I'm being sent to serve, and so you should have this core ability already built into your heart that you want their best before your own. Because if you're a missionary going out into the mission field with that sense of, I'm here for you. No, I've met lots of great missionaries, and I've consulted a lot through marketing. I'll never forget this one individual who's doing amazing work in his ministry as a missionary, local missionary. And I remember when he was getting started with his mission, I said to him, hey, I just want you to remember one thing as you get started in your work. God doesn't need you. He was like, what do you mean? Like, God doesn't need you.
Yep.
And he was taken back by that. I'm like, he doesn't. We're talking about the creator of the universe, like God. He doesn't need you or me at all. But take encouragement that he has approached you and he's selected you for this mission field, and never forget that he really doesn't need you. And when you really think about that, this brings up another theme I think is important, especially in the theme of just being missionaries of life, right? Is God really touched me recently with something beautiful. I think in life, we all can kind of go through this cycle of discerning and exploring our identity. Who are we? What do we want to be when we grow up? Are we the person that you created me to be? In a lot of ways, I think we can go in and out of an identity crisis. They're triggered by lots of things, major life events, right? And in those moments, you can kind of start to try to take the reins sometimes and go look for your identity in the different things instead of really focusing in on your identity in Christ. And, for me, that translates big time into what I do for a living and what I do to take care of my family, right? Because I know I'm being called, my vocation as a husband and father, therefore, I've got to provide. And so what's interesting is that I've gone through this recent season where I've been really seeking, all right, Lord, where are you leading me next? What do you want me to do? And in the waiting, you have the tendencies to try to manufacture something on your own, right? Instead of just truly surrendering to this notion of prayer, surrender. And I saw something online. I think it was something on social media where someone had talked about their job they just got. And in his update, where he was announcing this to his network, he says, when they approached me. And that led him to really discern with his family if this was the thing that was God's pushing him to. But what he said really stuck out to me, when they approached me. And then I started thinking about my own life. All of the things that have been successful in my own life were the things that were directly related to moments where God approached me through somebody or through some opportunity, as opposed to me trying to go open doors. And then I started thinking about how God approached Abraham, Moses, Mary, and how Jesus approached his disciples. It was never the other way around. And each of those examples, what were they doing? They were just serving faithfully where they were.
Right.
Moses was tending to his father-in-law's sheep. The disciples were fishing. They were working. They were just doing what God had given them to do right there in that moment. And it dawned on me how important it is that we have to serve our time and really faithfully just focus on being a good steward of what's in front of us. Faith and faithfulness. Every one of those people had some amazing level of faith, right? We know Mary, blessed are you, right? You have favor with our Lord, right? Abraham, Moses, all these people had this level of faith and faithfulness, and God approached them. And after he approached them, he then gives them this mission. Isn't that beautiful to think about? Even as all of us in life, to think, how does that relate to us?
Yeah, and I think as Catholic, he will come and find you and pull you out. And sometimes it's a grace that you can't explain. Sometimes I'm like, how am I so lucky that I had my conversion back in college?
Yeah.
Some people are so lost, and I'm like, that's a grace from God that he gave to me, and he will come find you. But I think that a lot of Catholics, because we're the works and
here's
belief,
the checkbox,
yeah,
right?
It's like, well, if I just do this and this and this, and I have to do this, and it's like, no, you get to do that. You get to share your life with others. You get to bring other people to God, and but it's so true that he will come find you. And isn't
that ironic, since considering your conference is called Seek, and it's like, who's the one seeking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you're there for a reason. You're here for a reason, that God wanted you at this conference. And I just feel really blessed that just family life is a huge part of it, and making sure that just, sometimes your family is the hardest. That's the hardest, is loving your family.
Yeah.
And that can be really tough. And it's
especially
like,
if you have 9 siblings.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Were you fighting over the bathroom all the time?
We were fighting over everything all the time. Still are.
That's why your dad was praying the rosary every Sunday.
Yeah. But yeah, it really is it's the greatest blessing of my life, being Catholic, and I'm so glad that you joined the party.
Oh my goodness.
It's a party, isn't it? You're never bored as a Catholic.
Well, it's a party.
Bored.
It's a party for many reasons, right? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, except for me. I'm done with the drinking.
Listen, discerning where God wants you to go is beautiful. No, it's funny because, as a Protestant, they always said in my Protestant circles that Catholics got the booze, Protestants got the broads. I don't know why that was a phrase that I would hear, but it's like, I don't know who I heard that from, but that was always like the joke in the Protestant circle.
That's so great.
So if you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, what kind of things were the Protestants talking about? That was one of them.
Oh,
yeah.
that's so
Catholics
funny.
got the booze, Protestants got the broads or blah, whatever it was. I'm like, oh my gosh. Becoming Catholic, though, it is funny how true that is. I had a friend, sidebar, who she was Baptist, right? So Baptists like don't drink and don't dance, depending on the kind of Baptist you are. But like I was in Alabama at a wedding in Auburn, Alabama, and my wife and I, she's Cuban, and I'm Italian. Like we love to get down.
She started feeling it.
DJs there playing music. We were the only ones on the dance floor. You want to talk about awkward? Come to find out, those Baptists in the deep South, they don't dance and drink.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty awkward. But so speaking of taking a Baptist to a Catholic church, I think it was a fish fry during Lent, and of course like I think it was beer. They were selling beer and wine, and I remember they were like, "Oh my gosh, you're serving
church.
Alcohol at church?"
We
drink
at church too.
Yeah, we drink it, but this is not church, right? This isn't the church, and this is the difference of like it's the parish hall.
Yeah.
We're just having a good time.
Yeah.
That's the sacred,
Yeah, we were at the Focus conference last week, and I had to go to the staff mass every day because we can't go like when everybody else is in the big mass. So I look over, and is it Mayomi wine?
Oh yeah. Pinot Noir.
And I was like, they are not using that wine right now.
No
I was
way.
like, oh, I'm so jealous because I had like just gave up drinking.
That used to be a good wine, by the way.
I was like, man, they got, and it's like, it was
That's so
funny because I'm like, do we really have that wine at mass? It's so funny.
Consecrate whatever they can. Mm-hmm. That's right. Chandon.
There has to be a certain amount of alcohol actually for you to even be allowed to use it in a Catholic mass.
I didn't know that.
So if there's not I don't know what the volume is, but there has to be a certain amount of alcohol.
Just not too much so that your 8-year-old, when he's having...
Yeah, exactly. There has to be some specific amount or else you can't use it.
I'll never forget my son at his first communion, and it's like watching him and all of his 8-year-old, 7-year-old friends taking communion in their face. Like,
yeah. Oh, it's so funny.
It's hilarious. So let's kind of like really get back into one. I want to ask before we kind of wrap this conversation up, talk a little bit about some of the most transformational experiences you can recall from this conference. I want to hear a little bit about your view of the college students, the families who were in attendance, and then I want to focus in on what advice you would have for those considering like becoming a missionary of some sort in any way, those that are like discerning being called to any type of religious vocation, but then also connect that back to the fact that, look, we are all called to be missionaries in our world. So starting with the conference, what are some of those amazing experiences you recall?
Yeah, I think this year was a little bit different for me in Salt Lake City because I was working, I think I had like 11 events that I was in charge of within the event.
Wow.
So we had like 20,000 people there in Salt Lake. Then we had another one in DC, and then actually it was our first year that we went international in Cologne, Germany. They had their first seat there. So it's all still very much under focus. We've got missionaries over in Europe. So I was working a lot this time around, but one thing that stands true of every Focus conference, and I think I've been to about 10 of them at this point. I started going back in 2009. When I was a senior in high school, and every single conference I've ever been to, one big theme for me is just the friendship aspect, because I started going to these back in 2009, and then you see the same people every year that you only see once a year at conference.
Yeah.
And you're all in adoration together. I mean, 20,000 people in one room adoring the Lord.
That's amazing.
The Blessed Sacrament. And you're like with these people that you've known since 2009.
Yeah, you kind of grown up together.
Yeah, and who care about your soul, who want you to go to heaven, and who are just so cool and so full of life. Like, that's one of the biggest things for me is that back when I went to that Nashville conference that I was telling you about when I was a student at Ole Miss, I came home knowing that all of those kids had something that I did not have.
Wow.
I didn't have it, and I wanted it.
Yeah.
And when you see something that you know that you don't have, that you want, it's like you'll do anything to get it. And so I knew that I had to start changing what I was doing. I knew, well, those kids go to Mass every day, so I guess I'll go to Mass every day. Those kids pray every day, so I guess I'll pray every day.
Wow.
And nothing's perfect, and I'm still on my own faith journey and healing journey for sure. But that's a main theme of conference is the people that you meet really care about you and they love you and they want you to go to heaven.
Yeah, so that shared vision.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you see, know, and love me, and they love you in the way that probably Jesus loves you, and it's just like a more pure way. A second big thing at conference is you go into these different breakout sessions. So like they have a main session, the keynotes, then they have a men and a women's talk, and then the rest of the day you have mass, you have adoration together, and then you go into your own impact sessions, and you get to pick which impact sessions you go to. Mm-hmm. So there might be one talk on pornography. There might be another talk on chastity. There's a talk on weed and what the church's view of weed. So like
Sure.
You get to pick what you're going to. There'll be a healing talk. There'll be just you name it. They have everything at this point. They have everything because Focus is, they're a well-oiled machine at this point. So it's anything that you need at that time. So, and it'll probably be different every year. So you go to those talks and you are encouraged by the talks. I mean, these are life-changing talks, that you turn next to you and there's a kid your age struggling with the same things you're struggling with in college. And it's just like, anytime someone speaks truth, that's huge, because that's never going to leave you.
That's right.
Like once you hear the truth, that never leaves you. So it's automatically this, yes, I want more. And then you hunger for more. And so Seek is really like it's kind of like the first step for a lot of people in just this lifelong journey of continual hunger for God and the truth. And really, it's just the beginning of just desiring God more, and then it never ends. So it's like, okay, I desire you more. And so now sometimes I'll be in prayer and God's like, okay, like it's okay, Claire, to ask me for something if you want something. And then it's like, oh no, I feel bad, I can't ask you for anything. And then when I really think about what I would ask if I did ask for anything, it'd be like, just like, let me fall in love with you even more.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that can happen to you in your life is not the death of a loved one, or your spouse cheats on you, or the worst thing that can happen to you in your life is that you are living without Jesus Christ. So
well said. Yeah. And what advice, so those that are watching this that are, maybe they're discerning in their life right now a way to be used, and they're discerning some sort of mission field for them, but then to those that don't recognize that this entire life and wherever we are is the mission field, what would you say to them?
It is the mission field. Everything is the mission field. And if someone's listening to this who is about to graduate, or if they're in college, like once you get out of college, you don't get that job that you really wanted. Or it's like God shows you, or you broke up with that person that you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with. Mm-hmm. Like God has you where he wants you, and he does things for a reason that we don't understand. So one thing I would say is don't get discouraged if you thought that something was going to happen that didn't happen. Sometimes those are the greatest blessings, and nothing is going to stand in the way of God's will. And so that's why it's usually kind of easiest to just pray that your wills align earlier on, because nothing's going to get in the way of his will for your life. So there's literally nothing you can do to stop his will from happening. And I think people get themselves into trouble when they're like, well, I don't want that. You know what I mean? So to try to just like pray that your will aligns with God's will sooner rather than later, and that the Blessed Mother would just come and just wrap you in her mantle, because she will. I mean, she literally works miracles every single day. So I would do your consecration of the Blessed Virgin Mary if you haven't done it. That's huge. And the reason I think it's so big is because she brings you so much closer to her son. I used to tell my students that those little things that you get on at the airport, that you walk on.
The mover, the people mover,
keep walking. I know, I hate when people just stand on them. I'm like, this is not the point of these. You need to keep moving.
It's like moonwalking when you're doing it.
Yeah, it's like, but it feels really cool, and you're like,
does.
wow, I'm like you feel like you're flying. So that's how I explain to my students, like, that's what Mary does.
That's a great image.
To get us to Jesus. It's like,
the next time I
she's
go to
gonna
the
get us there
airport,
quicker
I'm
because she
gonna be
knows him
thinking
better
about
than
that.
you do.
That's right.
Like, that she's his mom.
Yeah.
So who knows you better than anyone other than your wife? It's like, probably your mom.
Yeah.
Our dads know us, but really they don't. I mean,
Yeah.
my dad forgot my middle name the other day. He was like, "What's your middle name again?" And I was like,
You have 9 other
"Oh
children. You
my
have
God,
9 other siblings.
You don't know my middle name?"
Give him some credit. He's got 10
I
kids.
hope he was kidding. But
I don't remember my kids' birthdays.
So I know my mom knows me better than my dad.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the birthdays. But your mother knows you better than anyone, and the only thing the Blessed Mother ever wants to do is to point you to her Son. That's all. And so that could be a whole new podcast, because I could talk about the Blessed Mother for days. But
Well, round 2. We'll have to bring you back on.
for sure, and we'll just talk about Mary.
We'll just talk about Mary. We'll make all the non-Catholics cringe and just get real uncomfortable.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, Claire, thank you so much for
You're so welcome.
making time for me on your visit back home from Colorado, and for talking about Seek, and just this entire conversation's been it's been so fruitful, and I loved every minute of it.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
For having me.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching or listening to today's episode, thank you for joining us today. If you don't mind, please like this, share this video, or share this episode with a friend, and also make sure to subscribe or follow us to continue getting more content like this. Again, another episode will be out next Saturday, so come back and tune in for another episode of Ordinary Time. Until then, God bless.